It's no secret that the world we're living in seems to be rapidly moving at a pace to disintegrate around us, and we are in what many call the fourth turning. And the fourth turning being a point in our humanity where bad things seem to be everywhere. And we've had many of these fourth turnings in past history. The Great Depression was one. We're living in one right now, and there have been many, many, many before that. So this is not anything new, and it's not anything that will end the world. But as an esoteric Freemason, I find it important that we discuss these things as well, because we live in this world. And so while a lot of what I talk about deals with esotericism, I'd like to talk a little bit today about AI and jobs and the current economy. So let's take a look at what's going on, shall we? As I alluded to, this will not be a discussion on esotericism or on any type of any of that subject matter. This will be discussing current events, and so as Freemasons, it's important to not only discuss, of course, the things that make up our why we exist, but how do we apply that to the real world? And so this gives us a good real world scenario to kind of build off of. How are we gonna work on some of that esotericism and apply it to today's world? So I'm in the tech sector. I've been in the tech sector this summer for 32 years. So I've had a long career. I started off in games in the early 1990s. I have done games many times since then, but commercial software as well. And so I'm very intimately familiar with AI and what it can currently do. All right. So the first thing to understand with AI, and this right here, the CEO warning of the AI bloodbath coming, is to understand the rules of the game itself, understand corporations, understand businesses, understand the West. Personally, to me, you have to know the rules of the game and not shy away from it, not pretend it's something else because it doesn't make our fifis feel well, right? This is true for everything. This is true for our jobs. This is true for our relationships with women. This is true with how we raise children, how we deal with friends, everything. There are societal rules, and for whatever reason, we seem to love to hide from those and pretend the world is something that it's not. I deal with numbers and patterns. That's what I'm good at. And so we're going to delve a little bit first into what understanding the current world in the West and why we are where we are in the first place based off of patterns and the rules of society, and not in a PR politically correct kind of way, because I just don't deal in that. Now, that being said, this is just my opinion. So you may have a different opinion of me and of this subject matter, and that's fine. I'm always open to discuss these things. I love talking and discussing and viewing things from other perspectives. But again, I'm not interested in the feel good, the feel good vision of what the world is. I'm interested in what it really is. Now, to understand the world we live in, you have to understand the rules. And we were in such an illusory, good economic time from 2010 to about 2023 that I think the people coming into the job market after 2010 who had never been in a bad time didn't understand that there could be a bad time. And they were taken aback and didn't understand. I will go into the post-World War II economy up to today, but rule number one is this. Companies exist for one reason: to enrich their owners. That's it. That's it. They don't have an obligation to provide jobs. Companies exist to enrich themselves. And I'm going to give some examples. They don't care about you, the worker. They never have. When I came into the job market in the 90s, we already knew that. Like, that was very obvious. But people, I guess they forgot because things were so good and money was free, but nothing's free and we always pay for it later. So understanding that, the best time to be alive in the West was post-World War II to about 1960. Maybe a little bit after 1960. And the reason that is because this little chart here. This is the GDP chart versus wages. The cost of living versus how much you were paid for your work was very favorable to the working class. You could work a manufacturing job, a factory job, and you could make enough money to comfortably buy a house, raise a family, go on vacations, and have a nice life. It was truly the American dream. It was a prosperous time. And this was made possible by the concept of capitalism. Capitalism sprang out around this era. And the point of capitalism that was sold onto people was that it was a system of economy that was supposed to be superior to all others because the workers would share in the fruits of their labor. And indeed they did. Indeed they did. And this was unseen up to this point in human history. We have been, for the most part of our existence in modern times, or past 6,000 years, a form of indentured servants to an owning class in some shape or form. Now, as you can see by this graph, we all know this to be true. We all know unequivocally this to be true, but yet we are shamed for bringing this up. We are shamed everywhere for bringing this up. You're called a loser. You're called lazy, whatever, for bringing this up. But the fact is that GDP, which is the production of things, has risen sharply. But how much we compensate workers is flat. I mean, the math does not lie. This chart shows you that visually. And that's great for the owning class because they keep, I can't remember a time since I came into the workforce where you didn't see things like companies are doing better than they've ever have been before. Like they say that every year since I've been in the workforce. So since, 30 years, they've been saying that. And it's true. And you can see that on this graph. Other than a couple dips, companies they've been making bank, but workers haven't. And then suddenly what happens is the cost of living. See, the cost of living keeps rising. Inflation keeps happening. The more money that's in the system, the less that the dollar or whatever monetary unit you're using is worth. It's like dirt and gold. Dirt is useful but is worthless because I can go out, anybody can go out and get handfuls of it. Gold, on the other hand, is something that's rare. So therefore, gold is worth more money or more value because not everyone has it. Money is the same way. Our system is designed so that there has to be losers. There have to be people who are suffering for our economy to work. Because if everyone's prosperous, which we saw in the late 2010s into the early 2020s before COVID, if everyone's prosperous, then inflation goes bananas. And that's what happened. They printed out so much money that the value of our dollar was worth nothing. And, or not nothing, but, it decreased. That's what inflation's doing, is eroding its value. And now they had to take all the jobs away and take all the money out of the system. This is what you're seeing today to bring that under control. There has to be losers in our economy for money to work. Otherwise, money's useless. Otherwise, I can hand you a seashell and say, I want food for this, and, you're going to give it to me because I have something, right? Money, to be worth anything, requires there not to be a lot of it in the system. Otherwise, the more money in the system, the less it's worth and the more you need. That's basic economics. That's not a law of nature, by the way. That is a law of economics, which is human nature, if anything. So, okay, so we see the wage gap. We see all this happening. This is underlying the fact that companies don't care about you. You're not there. They don't hire you because they care about you. They hire you because you produce value for them. You produce something that they find useful. And the moment you don't produce something that's useful, or the moment that your value is less than what they need, they will remove you. And they don't feel bad about it. And they never have. That's a rule. You have to understand that. Now, for me, I have made hundreds of millions of dollars for other people off of my back. And I was okay with that because I was still comfortable, which is a trap. That's a trap I fell into. That's my own fault. My clarion call, my wake-up call was this. So as of 2023, the average CEO makes 272 times more than the average worker. According to data, the average CEO makes $14.9 million a year versus the average worker who makes $54,857 a year. Quite a considerable difference. And in the top Fortune 500 companies, that goes all the way up to a ratio of $603 for every $1 that the worker makes. They are literally using you as a battery and discarding you when they don't need you anymore. That's what this is. Now, a number of years ago, my wake-up call happened. I worked for a small company. It was a small tech company, and we were asked to do a job. And I was the lead developer. And so the CEO asked me how long this would take. And my team figured it out. So this is about a 36-week job. It was a very large project. And he said, no, you're going to do this in 12 weeks. You're going to do this in 12 weeks. And we did, right? Because it was our duty. We're not lazy. And I did not see the sun that summer. And that's not an exaggeration. I came to work before the sun came up, and I left after the sun went down. Every day for 12 weeks. And we got that work done. I logged in 80 to 110 hour weeks for 12 weeks straight, which is, if you do the math, a 40-hour work week is 160 hours a month, right? So if you're just doing a normal work week, it's 160 hours a month, which comes out to be like 1,200 hours a year or something. I logged over 1,200 hours in those 12 weeks. And I got pat on the head when I was done. Good job, Chris. You did great. Here's another job. Here's another 36 weeks. It was some other project that he needed done quick. And I was burned out. A week later, I was in one of the executives' office. And I had to fill some paperwork out. They had an invoice from the company that we had done this project for. It's a big corporation. And I noticed the line item, our company got a bonus of $30 million for doing it in 12 weeks. Not to count what they got paid on top of that for doing the work, which was a considerable amount. They got a bonus of $30 million for doing it in 12 weeks. This is why he wanted it done in 12 weeks, which he didn't share with me for obvious reasons. Now, the workers, my team, me, we didn't see a dime of that work. The executives, however, all got several $1 million payouts every quarter, as long as the company was doing well. And they had hired this kid. He was like 22 or 23 years old, just out of college. His daddy knew the owner, so he was hired onto the company as an executive. So he started his career as an executive, because nepotism is a thing. And that kid, who had worked at the company for 6 months, had nothing to do with my project, showed up to work a few days later in a Lambo that my work had provided for him off my back. He had made that. So this 23-year-old kid got a kickback of a couple $1 million right out of the gate, off of my work, off of my team's work. That was the wake-up call for me. If you work for other people, you're a battery for them, and they will discard you. That's the rule. And people will nod their heads and go, yep, that's how it is. And that's how it's always been throughout humanity, right? And someone can say, well, it's your fault for letting that happen. It's like, yeah, I guess. The thing is, all humans work great as a team, as an organism, as a beehive, which some of you Freemasons may recognize that. We all have roles we play, and that role creates this society and creates the beehive. Not everyone is suited to be an entrepreneur. I'm not good at it. I'm not. I have really good skills in certain things and I suck at other things. The things that I'm really good at happen to be the things that allow me to work and receive a paycheck and pay for my life, but I'm just not good at being an entrepreneur. But in our society, if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're not an investor class, you're one of the poor's and you will be thrown in the garbage. Okay. I hate to say it like that, but let's look at Microsoft now. All right, so Microsoft just was in the news. They're getting ready to lay off even more people. Microsoft's stock is roaring. Microsoft is worth like $3.57 trillion right now or something like that. And their stock's just on the rise. But they're still laying people off. Still laying people off. Because it doesn't matter how well the company's doing, they can always make more money. Everything is about short-term profits in today's world. All of it. Now, that comes back to the AI bloodbath. The AI bloodbath. So if you're not a part of the investor class right now, you are pretty much economically going to be in a lot of pain in the short term coming up. I don't have anything else. I can't see another pattern. So in 2020, the World Economic Forum came out and said, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And we all kind of laughed because the economy was still going pretty well. I know COVID was about to hit and a lot of people lost their jobs, but at the same time, there were a lot of jobs being artificially propped up by a bunch of money that was printed out. And so this didn't really hit home back in 2020, about 5 years ago. So let's fast forward to today. So Elon fires 80% of Twitter's staff. We see that as soon as he did that, as soon as Elon fired 80% of Twitter's staff and it kept working, every investor in the world saw this and grabbed a bullhorn and started screaming at their executive team, fire your staff. We don't need these people. You're costing us our sweet, sweet return on investment. And you just started, and it was dominoes. And so then the AI came up. ChatGPT was announced, and they were showing ChatGPT writing code and doing all this stuff. And every investor, this was the silver bullet, because software engineering has always been an unfortunate thorn. You had to pay money for it because doing it well is not something that's easy. I know a lot of people claim to do it, but doing it well is not something that most people can do. It requires a lot of logic and a lot of being able to problem solve, which is just not something that most people are good. It's a skill. But everyone flooded into software engineering because it was one of the last bastions of work that paid above the cost of living. There's not very many jobs that do. Go out and do a job search. When I was laid off, I did. The state that I live in, there were 55,000 jobs on the job board, and only 350 paid more than $18 an hour. And I live in a city where you have to make $33 an hour or more just to make even, and not so don't get sick, don't have don't have your car break down, don't have gas prices rise. You're at flatline median. Okay, so there was 350 out of 55,000 jobs paid more than $18 an hour. And yet on the news, it was how the economy was doing so great. All these jobs are being created. And both sides do this, by the way. That was the Biden administration claiming that our economy was awesome and with all these jobs. And the Trump administration does the same thing. They're talking about all these jobs. We added so many jobs. It's great and amazing. They're all like Taco Bell jobs. But they're jobs and you're not unemployed. You got to keep that stuff into consideration. Now, so Elon saw that, and they started firing everyone. It was like dominoes. The company I work for that I ended up getting laid off for, my team was an R&D team. And one of the jokers, they drew designs on a napkin. And they said, and ChatGPT made this website happen by just drawing on it. Understand that every executive's most vivid wet dream is that they don't need software people to make their visions happen. Because it's not about, honestly, you could have the best idea and still go nowhere, and some rich guy next to you has some mediocre idea that makes a bunch of money, because it's also about your business relationships. That's another component of things. That it's not just about the work you put in. In fact, most executives I know don't put a lot of work in, but they have a lot of really solid gold relationships that help them. Okay, so nepotism again, that it exists. I'm not saying it's impossible not to have a good idea. Obviously it is, but there are roadblocks. But they saw this napkin being created with the website, and so our president, we get called into a meeting the next day, and I already knew this meeting was going to happen when I saw that YouTube video. I saw on YouTube that they could make websites by just drawing it on a napkin. Can we do this? Can we fire all of our developers? That's exactly what she said. And a few months later, most of us were let go because they're all focused on AI right now, trying to get it to work. So what they see, what's going on right now is that is AI going to take your job? Blah blah blah. I work with AI every day. I work with it at work. I work with it in my personal projects, in my game design. I use it a lot. AI is a neat tool right now. No, it cannot take your job. I would even do some pushback because some people claim that it makes them 50% more productive. Then you weren't really good. Because it does help. It's like a super powered search engine for me that I can unstick myself and get some cool ideas. But I'm still flowing at my flow. But others claim that they can go faster. Maybe they can. I don't know. But what this is companies are moving back to the model that we used to have back in the early 2000s. So back in the early 2000s, I used to sleep at work because there were only 4 of us on a team doing the work of 16 or 17 people. Because back in the early 2000s, after the dot-com bubble burst, we were in competition with cheap foreign labor from India. And they had whole teams of 12 or more people for the same cost as 3 of us. And so companies have this weird thing of if it costs my company $50 an hour, let's say $100 an hour is a nice round number to produce something, but Tata Consulting, it costs them $98 an hour. Suddenly we're losing, or I've never understood that because I'm still making a lot of money and I'm still profitable, but just making profit is not the goal. I have to make more profit than everyone else or I'm losing. That is the mindset of the Western businessmen. They're very focused on, I got to be number one. It's not enough to make a profit. So this is how things used to be when I was still a journeyman in tech, and we've returned to that. They're calling teams and what they're saying it's AI. They're saying AI is taking a job because it looks better when they have to report this, right? When I have to report this, I don't want to report that I'm just laying off workers, even though I'm making hundreds of millions of dollars an hour as my company, because that makes it look bad, and I don't want pitchforks at my door. But I can say, well, AI replaced them, and everyone's like, okay, AI replaced them. It's a smokescreen. And what the executives are doing is they're turning those knobs, and they're trying to find how low can we cut before the quality suffers to a point where it's not acceptable. Businesses are willing to take a quality drop. In fact, a lot of industries, the whole point of what they do is to sell you a faulty product that breaks, so you have to buy it again, which is disgusting, but that's the world we live in. With tech, and if you see it in games, you see it in your digital products today, they're bug ridden because they're written poorly, but that's because these teams are just cranking crap out and they're hiring the cheapest labor possible. So to an executive, there is a level of failure that is acceptable. And so they know that their quality is not as good, and a lot of executives don't care. And the investors certainly don't care. The investors just care about how many yachts you're giving them and how many Lamborghinis they can buy. They don't as long as you can do that, that product can be the worst product ever in terms of quality, but if it's making money, they're good. Show them the money. And so they're dialing down the staff to get it to a point where now the pain is too much, the quality is too low, and then they're going to dial it up a little bit they're going to find that happy spot. And it's going to be a very low number. It's going to be a very, very low number. Going forward, it used to be growth was an indicator of your success. So what they were doing in the mid to late 2010s and into the early 2020s was they were hiring people to sit on the bench to make it look like they were doing so well. Everything's always been about optics. And now it's seen as if you have, the more people you have, the worse you are. So now investors want you to cut to the bone. Now you're efficient. This is how things work. And the thing is, if one company does it that's high profile, everyone's going to follow. They're like ducks, and they just follow the leader. That's the world we live in. So if you aren't an owner or an investor at this point, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And again, the beehive comes back. Not everyone, most people aren't equipped to be entrepreneurs, but you're seeing a lot of people try, and there's a lot of grifting going on everywhere. With a lot of people pretending to be experts on things that they have no business talking about. So that sets the stage for where we are. Now, where will we go? Knowing this, knowing AI has had billions pumped into it for one reason, and that's to take jobs. That's why investors dumped billions of dollars into it. They want the total removal of as many jobs as possible. That is the goal. I sit on investor boards. I hear the goal with my own ears. They want the removal of every job. They don't want to replace those jobs with new jobs. They want them all gone. They don't want to pay people anymore. So this leaves this interesting paradigm. They have a tool that might be able to do this. Okay? Might be able to do this. So here are some counters that you're going to hear. And this is just my opinions of what's going to happen. I'm not Nostradamus, and I'm sure I'm going to get things wrong, but I'm going to show you the patterns that I see based off of what I know. Based off of what I know, people to be like in terms of what their goals are. Because knowing what their goals are is important. Okay, the first thing to look at, the number one counter to why this is just all being blown out of proportion, is that we've had technology changes in the past and always have new jobs emerge from that technology. And so therefore to be afraid of new technology makes you a Luddite, and you are, it's just not reasonable to them, right? It's not reasonable. Now, here's the difference between AI and, say, the steam engine or the printing press or the loom, because they always use all these things, or the automobile. Those displaced workers, and those workers had other jobs they could move into. AI is supposed to be a super intelligence that does everything you can do better because it's smarter than you. Okay, so if they achieve that, what possible job do you think is going to emerge that's going to pay you a living wage that AI can't do better than you? And to me, the answer is none. Like, if it's that good, anything you can think of that you're going to make a bunch of money off of, it's already going to know how to do much better than you. Why do you think the owning class would allow you to just have that job? They're not. The whole point that they're investing in this technology for is to not have to pay people anymore and to remove obstacles from obtaining resource and capital. So that's why I don't see that. The scope of this, like how much it impacts, it's every type of analysis thinking job. Professors, teachers, technical workers, engineering, architects, lawyers, you name it, general physicians. There's a clinic in town, the Mayo Clinic. They already have AI floors. There's not a human being. There's like a couple technicians on the floor, but everything's run. There's no nursing staff. There's no administrative staff. There's no doctors. Because a general physician, what do? They come and take your temperature and your blood pressure and stuff. You tell them some symptoms, and they go, based off of these things, I think it's this. That's going to be automated. It already is. They're already doing trials that exist today. All right. So, yeah, tech, you're just going to have new jobs. People were like, yeah, you can be an AI prompter. That's going to be a career. Guys, an AI prompter as a career. Look, the easier something is to do, the more people can do it. The more people that can do it, no one's going to pay you. That's not a skill. I mean, maybe there's a skill to make, there is a skill to making AI give you what you want. There is. You have to know how to prompt it. But a lot of people can do that compared to having them actually code and know how to architect software. So, yay, you've created a bunch of more poverty jobs, but right, that's not going to cut it. Now that people don't want to think that way, they're like, no, 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 there's going to be something, because there always is. It's fallacious to say it's always been this way, so it will always continue to be this way. That is not, don't, I would never get stuck in that mindset personally. Yes, patterns happen. Yes, loops happen, but that doesn't mean they always will happen. Now, second counter argument, AI sucks today. It can't take your job, therefore you're fine. They're judging it based off of what it does today. And I agree, today it can't take your job for tech people, for coders. I'd argue that the concept of it replacing entry-level programmers, it makes a lot of mistakes, just like entry-level. So I guess in a way, it can do a lot of what they can do. But by not training, we're not bringing in junior level anymore. So we're basically saying, if you don't have a job by now, if you didn't start this career 5 years ago, you will never get in here, and we've pulled the ladder up. But it won't get that far. We'll see. I can't say we will or not. From what I've seen, I believe it will get pretty far. And it's not real intelligence like we think. It's a prediction machine ultimately. But I think that they'll get it to that point where it will. Third counter argument. Well, this is great. Everyone will have UBI. We'll live lives of leisure. We don't need to work anymore. We'll have this post-AI economy. It will be amazing utopia where we finally freed from the shackles of work. I hear that all the time. That will never, never, never happen. Why will it never happen? Is it because it can't happen? No, of course not. If AI is as good as it could be, yeah, our productivity could be out the roof and we wouldn't need to work. Humans wouldn't need to work anymore. But that will never, never, never happen. That will never, never happen because not having to work is a form of power. It's a form of power that the investors and the elites have. They don't have to work. They're not going to share that with normal people. Number one, never. They see normal people as useless feeders, is what they call them. They're not going to let you sit around and do nothing. Two, idle hands are the devil's work. They know if the population's able to sit back and do nothing, that endangers them. So they want to keep you distracted, fighting each other, which they're doing a great job of. And yeah, you're not going to get that. And we'll talk a little bit about UBI. I think there might be a form of UBI, but it's definitely not going to be the life of leisure that you want. The other thing I hear, this is stupid. Why would you think that AI is going to take everyone's job? If everyone has no job, then no one can buy stuff. Why are companies willing to create this world where there's going to be no jobs because then no one can buy their stuff? That's true. That's true. Most people won't be able to buy their stuff. Oh, well, look again at the quote next to me. They've already seen this coming years ago. You will own nothing and you will be happy. They know that. You will not be able to buy stuff anymore. Capitalism, consumer capitalism, is a tiny fart in the history of humanity. Very tiny blip. And I would argue it's on its last leg, about to go away. Consumer capitalism has been around less than 100 years, and it will be a forgotten memory that we'll talk about in textbooks on the downfalls of human greed. But we won't, again, this goes back to, it's always been that way, it always will be. Consumer capitalism has been the thing that everyone has lived with for so long that they can't picture another world unless they'll scream at you socialist or communist or whatever. But there have been other forms of economies. A new one may emerge. I see, in my opinion, another form of feudalism. We already kind of live it today. This will be they call it neo-feudalism or techno-feudalism. And in a feudalistic economy, which the world has lived under for hundreds and hundreds of years, and it actually worked pretty well. Yes, you don't own a lot of stuff. So if you're a person who needs to own a lot of stuff, that is misery for you. But humans have lived most of our existence without owning a lot of stuff, and they did just fine. In a feudalistic economy, you have the owners, the kings, the landlords. They own everything. And then you have the rest of us, the 99%. And we, in exchange for being able to live on their land, we provide services of some type. The question is what type of services. So that's going to move you into the last segment here, which is what patterns do I see emerging. So that's why I don't agree with the AI. You're just going to have new great jobs and blah blah blah. We've already seen, ladies and gentlemen, if we go back to the wage gap here, right? Here's math from the last 70 years. This shows you their interest in prosperity for the normal person. 0. They keep the wages as flat as possible. In fact, they offshore for cheaper foreign labor more than they hire domestics in a lot of cases, because it's not because Americans can't do the work. Elon will go on record and say it's because Americans are lazy. No, it has nothing to do with that. I've been around business people for 30 years. I know exactly why they do it. It's because I can get 5 or 6 of them for one American. That's it. These ICE raids, I saw they raided a meat packing plant in Iowa or Nebraska, and half the company was illegals. And companies are doing this without any repercussions. They're hiring these people. They're illegal, so they can pay them very low. And these people they stack themselves many to an apartment. And they've been doing this for over 20 years. I remember in the late 90s when I was working for GE, they had most of the floor were import workers from India. And those guys would live 4 or 5 to a 2-bedroom apartment. So, anyhow, we're already starting to have to do that now. Okay, so what do I see the patterns looking like? In my opinion, the patterns. Short term, it's going to be very painful. Short-term transition. It's going to be a very painful short-term transition because a lot of people are stuck in the it always has to work that way mentality. So everyone has to have a job because that's just the way it is. It's going to be short-term pain because no one's going to want to look at UBI because that to them is socialism. So the left wing is going to push for UBI. The right wing is going to oppose it because that to them is just a bunch of useless people sitting around doing nothing, getting paid for it. They're going to fight over that. But what's going to happen is that over the next 5 to 8 years, what you're going to start seeing is you're going to see a bunch of foreclosures start rolling through because people aren't going to be able to pay their bills or their mortgage. You're going to see, and we're already seeing this today, you're seeing people consolidating into single families are moving into apartments with others or getting roommates, and you're going to start living a bunch of people into a house because you have to, because you all have hustle jobs, and it takes 4 hustle jobs to make the ability to pay for your rent. You're going to see that. And after 5 to 8 years of that, after that, it's going to be like a consolidation of that. And people are going to start getting pissed off because they're going to get the burnout is real. You can only work 80 to 110-hour work weeks so long before you're just tired. The mob is going to rise up. And so they're going to have to, and they know this, they're going to have to find an answer before the mob rises up. So as that's happening, a lot of people are going to flood into what's left for work, which is the trades. So that's another counter. Learn to code. Learn to plumb. Okay, that's valid. Yeah, learn to plumb. Well, there's a couple problems. Like if you're a guy like me, like I'm old now, my body's broken down. I can't go be a laborer. So people like me are kind of, your battery is expired. You're going to be thrown in the garbage unless you can find something or someone's going to take care of you. If you're lucky enough to have a family to take you in, that's great. Otherwise, you're going to see homelessness escalate. And especially since a lot of us are isolated now. We all live by, we have been conditioned to be by ourselves and to not want other people. No relationships, no families, all that. So that'll be an interesting experiment to see all the homelessness rising up. But a lot of people are going to flood to the trades, especially if you're young. I would recommend it, sure, because it's a useful skill. It's useful to know how to plumb. It's useful to know how to work on electricity. It's useful to know carpentry, masonry, etc. Those are a lot of cases poverty jobs that will wreck your body, but you will be useful to society and to yourself. And if you're useful, you can always find a place, and that is key. That will be key in this coming era. If you have no use, If you sit around and do nothing, or your skills like I'm really good at tech and data architecture and all these engineering things that are AI can do, will be able to do, people like me are not going to have a use in society anymore, in a society based off of materialism. So I don't have anything I can tell you. I don't know what I'm going to do personally myself. So anyhow, the problem with everyone flooding the trades is economics. If I can find 12 plumbers that live on the same city block, guess what? I'm not going to pay you, because while your quality might be better and you think you're worth the whatever $30, $40 an hour, if I can find a guy willing to do it for $8 an hour, that's just human nature. They're going to do it. So the wages are going to plummet because all the people going to the trades. And then let's talk about robotics. So Amazon's already got robot trucks in beta. Where I live, we have robot cars that drive around with no driver. So driving positions are going to be gone. Then Elon's working on his Optimus model, and he wants trades robots. He wants to replace laborers as a businessman. He doesn't want to have to hire people anymore. That stuff's coming. For you tradespeople, you are where the software people were in 2020 when we saw ChatGPT revealed right now. It's down the road. Like, you're good for about 5 to 8 years, but you will be replaced. And people scoff at that and go, that'll never happen. Well, the software people in 2020 were saying the same thing. When Elon fired 80% of Twitter, a lot of those people were scoffing at Elon, calling him an idiot. And there's always going to be a need for software people. There's never going to be a problem. And then now there's a problem and you can't find a job. So keep that in mind. Robots are coming. We talked about, the analysis and thinking jobs will be gone. There won't be jobs anymore. There won't be careers anymore. So this will bring back UBI. So the UBI said their government's going to have to think of something. It's not going to happen short term. There's going to be a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of starvation. I would not be surprised to see bread lines start to be created like in the Depression, because when all the swaths of work are gone, they're not going to give you a UBI right away. They're just going to sit back on their heels and watch and see how bad it can get, just because human incompetence is what it is. Now, what the UBI will look like, I believe there will be a form of UBI. It will not be the life of leisure that you want it to be. UBI will be this. Well, we need to have a role for people. We need to have them have something to do. What are we going to have them do? Well, this is where state jobs are going to start showing up. In exchange, because all those houses and apartments are going to be empty or not, they're going to be owned by the state or the bank. In exchange to live in your little apartment, your little cell, and have 3 bug sandwiches a day, you're going to be on a road crew, or you're going to be doing garbage detail, or you're going to be doing construction work. You're going to be doing something, and it's not going to be leisurely work. It's going to be hard work. You're going to be doing state-sponsored 8 to 12-hour day hard work. And in exchange for that, this is feudalism, in exchange for that labor, you'll be given a meal coupon and rent. You'll have a place to stay. So they'll take care of you until you can't do it anymore, until your body breaks down. Then what? That's the question. The disability and the disabled and the elderly, I'm particularly concerned about them. They may get a dispensation where they'll get a little bit more, but look at how we treat the elderly today. We treat them like garbage. If your family doesn't take you in, you are thrown out and left to die in the street. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, man, you got these people living off cat food today. I remember stories of that 15 years ago. What do you think is going to happen when there are no jobs? You think that suddenly we're going to have a change of heart and we're going to take care of the elderly and the disabled? I don't. I don't at all. What I do see happening is them finding ways to euthanize people, and we can talk about the COVID vaccine all day long. But I tell you, I had to take it because if I didn't, I would have lost my job. And I was in the hospital that night thinking I was having a heart attack. And we've had a lot of young people die of heart attacks over the past couple of years that have been in the news. Obviously, I can't prove anything, but I seriously think that was untested experimental garbage, and it would not shock me in the least. know that that was an accelerant to start to call some of the older people off, because we just can't feed them, and they're not going to walk through the streets gunning people down. But if they die of heart attacks, it's like, well, they died of heart attacks, natural causes. That's grim and dark. I understand, but that it would not shock me in the least. I can't. I'm not saying that that is the case, because I can't prove that. But I know that many of us have had major health issues since that vaccine. So take from that what you will. I see travel restrictions coming up. In feudalistic times, you weren't allowed to travel freely at all. I see that coming back. You'll have to have passes to leave your area. And you will literally own nothing, because consumerism will be done. Now, the picture I have up here that we've been looking at, that's Rat Utopia from the 1970s. It was an experiment done on the rats, the population. And when the rats would get to a certain size, they always imploded and went totally berserk. The females would start to hate the males. They wouldn't want to breed. The males would go off and just groom themselves all day until they died. It just turned into an utter mess. And there's a lot of parallels that we can draw to Rat Utopia in our own society, in my opinion. Long term, so we're going to have short-term pain. Long term, I see the birth rate continuing to crash, because feminism has conditioned women to hate men, to see men as oppressors and abusers and enslavers. And they will not, I don't see that letting up. In fact, I think that pendulum has not yet even reached its apex yet. We will see more hating men. Now, it's fun to note that the elites don't usually have the same problems as the rest of us. They go to different schools. They learn the actual trivium and quadrivium, and they have no problem having a bunch of kids. But notice that in the real world that we live in, relationships are hard to come by. Most of us are alone, and we've been conditioned by dating apps and whatnot. Most men are alone, and most of the women are chasing after the top echelon of guys, which they're not going to settle on one when they don't have to, because that's our biology. It's just a mess. So I continue to see the birth rate will continue to plummet. People don't want kids. They can't afford kids. I see that works out favorably for those who want the population to fall. They still want to keep a population of people who can be technicians and laborers, but they don't need a bunch of us. The Georgia Guidestones that were destroyed, they stated their intentions very loudly. They wanted to bring the global population down to 500 million. You'll hear the elites say this very, very clearly out loud. Bill Gates has positioned for this. They want to bring the global population down because they think that the earth is overcrowded and the resources are finite, etc. And all that makes sense. No one wants to be one of the people culled, but the reality is that most people will be if they get what they want. Is that good or evil? I'll leave that for you to think about. I'll give you at the end here a good, because I know this is a lot of dark I just laid on you, but that's only because it's discomfort. It's uncomfortable for most of us, and discomfort, and pain are things we try to avoid. We're a very pleasure-seeking, status-seeking animal. Psychology and roles. So we don't need, for society to work, most of the jobs we do today are useless, right? Most jobs that most people have, if that job goes away, no one cares. No one misses your job, because it doesn't really do anything for society. When you live in a village of 100, everyone has a role. You have hunters, you have security, you have weavers, and you have people who take care of the children, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone's got a role. It's a beehive. In a large society like ours, you have a lot of people that aren't needed. They don't have no role, and they mill about aimlessly. And then they go on YouTube and make YouTube videos like this. No, but seriously, there's just a lot of people without actual roles, and that's something we're all searching for, is meaning. And where is that lack of meaning? Well, our society of comfort has created a lack of meaning and has caused people to go berserk. You have no meaning. Your job is mostly useless unless you're an essential job, a truly essential job. You don't do anything that benefits society. So that's the problem. We need roles. We need a meaning. And Most of our jobs are useless, so they're getting rid of those. And now the pain begins, because now you have people with no jobs, but they weren't doing anything that benefited anyone anyway. It goes back to rat utopia. Population gets to a certain size, people go berserk. Rats went berserk, aren't needed anymore. So all that being said, what are the goods for all this? Well, the population crash is probably good. We have this obsession with GDP needing to rise, but GDP is just making stuff. We don't need stuff, in my opinion. We don't need a bunch of stuff. We need a role. We don't have anything spiritual. It's all about materialistic gain and status. And if you don't have that, if people aren't jealous of what you have, you feel like you're a failure. If you don't have all the toys at the end, you're a failure. And that's all ludicrous. It has nothing to do with anything. So as an esotericist, this is important to think about. That this upcoming season that we're entering into, that some of us are already in, will be painful, will be very uncomfortable. You will lose everything in some cases, and it will make you question if you're a loser or not. Understand what you're mourning the loss of useless stuff. Minimalism, I think, is the key at this point going forward. In this era right now, you have to detach from the stuff, and you have to try to adapt a minimalistic mindset. That is tough for people. I'm going to get into some woo-woo. For those of you who don't care about woo-woo, you can close your ears. But the age of Pisces was always about an age of conflict. And the age of Pisces is said to have begun in the year 7 BC. There was a super conjunction of the planets, and that's why they have attributed that as the actual birth of Christ, 7 BC. So if any of you are wondering how they could possibly know that, they're basing that off of a super conjunction that happened that year with the planets. A bunch of planets got in alignment. And that is when they say Pisces happened, the age of Pisces, is the age of conflict, which definitely describes the last couple thousand years and rooted us in materialism. The age of Aquarius, if you follow the math, does not begin for another 100 years or so. So we still have a little ways to go before we start transitioning. And the age of Aquarius is one of thinking and technological advancement. And it's dominated by the air element. And the last time we had this age, a lot of our crucial technology was remembered, if you believe in past civilizations. But those are times when technology moves forward. So humanity as a whole, if it gets shrunk, will benefit from that by not having a bunch of people without a role going berserk, and should be one of moving back into the first turning of the wheel, meaning these are the hard times that will transition us to a good period. We just have to be the unfortunates that live during that time. And as in Lord of the Rings, one of my favorite quotes, Gandalf is asked, Gandalf hears, I'll say Pippin, I wish I didn't live during these times. And Gandalf says, so do any people who live during times like this. But it is not for us to say what time we live in. It is only ours to make the best use of the time given to us. So when you hear you will own nothing and be happy, take that as an opportunity. That it's possible to detach yourself from the materialism that is everywhere and to form actual solid communities with people once more. Not for the worship of things and status, but for evolving humanity and building something better. And that is the Freemasonic, esoteric, Rosicrucianism, etc. lesson that I'm trying to sift through. I know we started on the beginning. Most of this video is it looks negative, but in the end, I think this is a very positive thing. It's just that we have to be willing to embrace change, discomfort, and pain for the future generations to build off of, just as our ancestors did during the Great Depression when they had to live through those times and the other hard times that have come many times before that. So again, thank you. This one was a longer one, but I wanted to get that one off my chest. If you have any comments, please leave them below. Love to hear from you. And otherwise, I will talk to you soon. Stay safe. Have an enjoyable summer as best as you can. We'll talk to you soon.